Hi, this is Regina Y. Favors coming to you with a rebound relationship series titled Understanding Relationship Failure 10 Reasons. This is going to be a collective lecture, and it is divided into multiple videos. So, you will need to listen to the first part, the second, the third, and so on. So, understanding relationship failure is important because if you don't take the time to self assess what went wrong with the relationship, you are doomed to repeat the same types of mistakes. Understanding relationship failure also points to the fact that most relationships fail oftentimes with our contribution, but it could also be that you just really chose the wrong person, or the person was just not ready to be in relationship, or the person could have chosen you as maybe a fallback plan until they were able to marry someone else. So I want you to take some time to listen to the full series. If you have any questions, please leave a comment and I will respond. Also, take some time to hit the subscription button and then hit the notification bell if you are interested in further videos. Thank you for visiting the channel. So this lecture is subject to fair use. So I will be commenting, criticizing, teaching, and pursuing scholarship using this lecture. Reason number 6, not the marrying kind. Part 3, toxic men and women. For women, toxic men test you. They let you know the urgency of a situation and how they need help, but they will leave it up to you to make the next move. They depend on you to volunteer to save them. In romantic relationships, including marriage, men are often toxic, especially the type of man who uses a woman for sex and cheats on his wife. Toxic men who use women for sex and money will do so in the courting phase of the relationship. So even if we were not talking about toxic men and not toxic women later in this lecture, we all have some problem with volunteering to save somebody. Even if that person has shown us multiple times that they are refusing to help themselves, they won't initiate any change in their lives. They know they need to take responsibility. We still have the habit of raising our hands before the time. So we don't always have to sort of criticize the toxic man in a romantic relationship. We can look at our relationships we have with our family members. We can look at our relationships we have with friendships, our relationship we have with people on the job. I don't know how many times a person has come to me and told me what was going on with them, but they didn't ask me for help. And then I've always had this habit, you know, if you remember being in the classroom, K through 12 classroom, especially in elementary, and you want to impress the teacher. So as soon as she asks a question, you raise your hand really quickly, like it's all the way up in the air, waving and everything. Well, that's what volunteering is as well. You know, you raise your hand before you know what the actual issue is. There was a time in my past, in my early adult years, when I had just graduated from high school, and I was I had my job, a full-time job, about a year and a half outside of high school. And there was this girl on my job. I was working customer service. It was a project for Western Union. The company had a contract with Western Union, and I was working this job and everything. And she came to me and she acted like she needed so much help and everything, and if she could borrow, money from me. It's something how people will ask to borrow, but they won't ask for help. There's this like expectation. There's a difference between them borrowing something because they basically want to use your money. But when they get in a time of need, a place of need, it's funny, they won't ask you for help. So she asked me for some help, for some kind of money or whatever, and we were working on the same job. and I gave it to her. I assumed, incorrectly, that if somebody asks you for some money, they must really need it. The next day or so, she came in with a new hairdo, new shoes, new outfit, and I said, wait, so is all of this new? And you don't know for certain if the shoes are new or if the outfit is new. They might have had that at the house, right? But you can tell that hair is new. And she comes in, and I asked her, I said, you got your hair fixed? Yeah, girl, I got to get my hair fixed now. One thing about it, I got to get my hair fixed. Okay, but I gave you the money, thinking that you needed help. Well, yeah, I didn't have all the money to get my hair fixed. And from then, and that was in my early adult years, I understood from then not to give anybody any money, like friendships. Now, I'm not saying I didn't struggle with, family members or with other types of people along the way, but I understood in that moment that some people will use your money and plan your money because they don't want to use their own. And so it was much later, though, that I realized, and this was in college, that I realized volunteering before my time was linked to people pleasing. And if you have had any sort of, demanding family environment, demanding parents or anybody like that in your life, that it is very easy to slip into people pleasing. So I had to begin assessing myself in college, assessing my relationships, and I stopped volunteering. However, we are talking about toxic men and how oftentimes they let you know the urgency of a situation and how they need help, but they will leave it up to you to make the next move. So they don't set boundaries. I only need just $100 just this time. I'm not the kind of man who's going to keep asking you for something. But they shorted my check, and I didn't realize how much it affected me, and I just got to pay this. That's it. So just if you can loan me this, and a good man will, a provider type, he wouldn't let you take over his shelter costs and other types of costs unless there is a true emergency. So I've had this type of situation where they won't say a word, and they are basically testing you. They are, trying to see where they can have an end with you, with your finances, with your body, with your mind, right? And if they can control you in these areas, it becomes easier for them to make other types of decisions as well. While money might keep a toxic man for a while, it won't last. He'll take your money, but he usually won't take you in the long run. Never fall for his challenge to be the one who rescues him from one of his lack of sex or lack of money problem. that is not your responsibility. And ironically, it will only cause him to disrespect you for being dumb enough to fall for his con. Most men do not respect women who bail them out. It reeks of desperation, and the man can read the anxiety in the woman to keep the relationship. So that rescuing him in terms of lack of sex is something that I have done. The money problem, we've all done that. That's obvious. I had to begin to assess my contribution to my past relationships in terms of money, and how in the strangest sense, they will take your money and hold you in contempt at the same time. I don't get it myself, but that's what happens. But the rescuing him with sex is something that I did in this last relationship, and maybe in previous relationships, because if you get with somebody who doesn't want to be with you, truly, even if they are living in your house, eating up your food, having sex with you, but they don't want to be with you, and sometimes you can feel that, then every time you have sex with that person, you are sort of rescuing them. Maybe there's some pain that you can feel, or you can sense on the inside of them, and you think sex is going to actually solve the problem. Well, when you think about it, sex makes you feel good, but it doesn't really solve a lot of problems, especially if it's outside of marriage. You actually create more problems with sex than you solve problems, because even when you have sex with that person and it feels good, you still get up out of that bed still kind of struggling with something. Like the sex itself might have helped you in that moment, but you still have to live with yourself once you get up and have to take a shower, comb your hair, leave the house, and navigate your life. So it's like an abused person walking on eggshells. They don't know how to take the person who is kind of quiet, silent, moody. We've all had those types of relationships with parents, with other family members, other friends, other lovers, romantic lovers, where we come in and it looks like the person is about to blow. And so, just like a dog can sense something in a human and just kind of sit down and respond, we sort of are like that with romantic partners. I'm not calling us dogs. I'm just looking at the signal system, the sensing system, that we can feel something on the inside of that person, and instead of cooking them a meal, saying let's go walk, let's talk about it or whatever, we respond with sex. And that is a way that we often try to rescue toxic men. And I'm not saying all men are toxic. I'm talking about the man who knows he doesn't want to be in relationship with you, but will pursue something or just take up space and get himself together while he pursues the person he actually wants to be with. That's the problem. That's the one that we often rescue. We give our souls to. We give all of our time, our money, our mind. It's a wasteland. And so most men do not respect women who bail them out. It reeks of desperation. It's like we're trying to pay for their love. But, I have to challenge that a little bit, because you still needed the money. So how is it me you're going to hold in contempt and call, desperate, when you still needed the money? If I didn't give you the money, you would be calling me other types of names. Okay? And then with women, we often think to ourselves, well, he's my man. Why wouldn't I give him the money to help my man. But you have to know the difference between the man who is a responsible type person who pays his bills, has his own place, keeps a job, and the man who doesn't. A toxic man also uses a woman right after a breakup, especially if the woman who left married a more handsome, wealthy person. You may be the vehicle that the toxic man uses in order to help him build up his damaged ego. A toxic man cannot accept defeat. If you are an encourager or you validate the man with encouraging words and wisdom, he will use that as a boost, but only to seek out a woman who doesn't give him the same boost. The boost is for him to get a better mate. So I essentially, with my last situation, I essentially housed him, loved him, sexed him, just to help him get himself together to pursue somebody else, essentially, because we're not married. He didn't really pursue marriage with me. I sort of pursued marriage with him. I said, we're together. I'm not going to be with anybody unless we're going to get married. And he basically agreed without actually really saying any words or proposing. And he didn't propose. He never proposed. He never got down on one knee. He never bought a ring. He called himself trying to buy some Cracker Jack box ring as a way of distracting me. It was literally a Cracker Jack box ring. But it was later that I found out that he bought a real ring for someone else to whom he is married to now. So his situation, I got him when he was, sort of broken. And I was listening to a interview on Hollywood Unlocked with Laz Alonso, Melissa Ford, and Jason Lee. And Laz Alonso was, talking about a person that he used to date and how they met each other when they were both, broken people. He prefaced that part of the interview by saying that people come into your life for a season, for a reason, for a lifetime, right? And the person that he was referencing, the woman that he had dated in his past, he realized that it was just for a reason, partly for a season. They were both broken people. Somehow they found themselves dating, and then later they realized that they were dating and that that it wasn't going to work. So in some ways, people come into your life to kind of help to encourage you along. Sometimes people, come into your life to use you. But if you are the type of person who is a giver, an encourager, a person who validates with encouraging words, you will always get someone, has someone to kind of use you. Sometimes the person can be still a good person, but it's just something in you that sort of makes them always want to come back and get more. In this situation, in my past situation, I essentially helped him to get better, but for someone else. You will see a lot of YouTube videos, people who have been with someone 5-10 years only for them to marry someone else. And that's hurtful. It's extremely hurtful. I'm over it now. I see what it is today. But I mean, think about that parent that you have who might be bitter, who might struggle with relationships and struggle with relationships with you. There may be a root to something like that they were with someone, they helped that person out, and then that person decided to leave. So sometimes the thing that you do for especially a toxic man would be only to basically boost his ego, basically to suggest that I can pull somebody. Even though my ex broke up with me, I'm still worthy enough to pull somebody. A toxic man will also use a woman as an emotional punching bag, whereby he takes out on you the aggression and hatred he feels towards women in his past who have done him wrong. He may have abandonment issues. So the thing about I hate that concept of emotional punching bag, because I don't think you should ever, I don't care how wounded you are, I don't think you should ever take your frustrations out on someone else. When we got the whole outside where you could take a rock and hit it up against a tree, where you can throw your bag up against the wall, you could take a baseball bat and just hit something, a piece of wood, I don't know, but you got the whole outside where you can accomplish releasing those frustrations, like I have a good example of something like that. I'm going to talk about something that doesn't relate to it, and then I'm going to follow it up with something that is, similar to it. So, when you go into the library, especially in college, it's a big, big library. You have different types of students, with different types of tables and things like that. And the thing I hate about the library with people is they will come into the library and talk and converse and be loud. And I think to myself, when I'm sitting at a table that is near a window and you can look outside of that window, and I think to myself, it's funny that you come in here to talk loud. And it's a library, and you're supposed to be quiet, right? But I think to myself, here it is, you got the whole outside. You can go out there and you can laugh and joke and kind of play and be goofy, and then turn around, come back in and do some work in the quiet. No, they want to do it all in the library. You always have to hear all of these shushes and the librarian coming to them to keep it down, and everybody looking at them and basically suggesting keep it down, and they're still doing it. Right? So I had a situation where my ex, we got into a bit of a issue. We were at a Denny's restaurant, and something came over me. He kept checking his phone, and something came over me. By the time we got to the Denny's restaurant, and this time in our relationship, I had, figured out the cues. I, figured out the patterns and things like that. I was just, I know what this is now. And so, first thing I said when he got up and he took his phone to the bathroom, to the restroom, then he came back, and then he kind of, looked at his phone again. And the first thing that came out of my mind, so when is the next ball going to drop? And he looked at me strangely. He couldn't understand what I was talking about. And I said, okay, you're looking at your phone. So has she been calling you, or are you still fooling around with her, right? When is the next ball going to drop? That's all I'm waiting on, right? And so we ended up eating the meal heartily. And then we went on ahead and left. And we kind of had the equivalent of a little spat outside. And we walked to the bus stop. And so just a number of things that I was saying. I can't remember the full conversation. But he had a water bottle in his hand at the time. We were kind of arguing before the bus came. And not loudly, but it was kind of noticeable. So then he was pacing in front of the bus stop and just saying his spiel, and I was saying my spiel. And then all of a sudden, he looked like he wanted to throw the water bottle away. Now, there's a trash can at the bus stop. You can just, chunk it into the trash can. So he sort of began to aim, and instead of putting the water bottle in the trash can, he threw it at my leg. Now, he claims that he didn't know he was hitting me, but you had a trash can right next to you, very clear, as big as day. So he aimed it, he paused, and then he threw it again. He threw it anyway, and it hit my leg. And you're talking about something that woke me up. I mean, if I was asleep in that moment, it woke me. The whole situation woke me, right? And so he ended up walking home because we wasn't that far from the house. And then I ended up, getting on the bus, and I just felt just kind of scared. I wasn't scared of him, but I was just scared of the situation. Then I get home and I get in the house, and then he eventually comes home. So I thought about that situation a little bit more later. And if you've ever been on a bus stop, you know that there is the covering for the bus stop. There's the trash can that is near the bus stop. You know, depending upon the area, you may have other little places where you can put something in the trash, anything like that, right? So it hit me that, he had more respect for the trash can, for the other trash can that's on the other side of the street, the whole other side of the street, the sidewalk, all of that. He had more respect in that moment than for me. That he didn't want to trash the water bottle. He wanted to trash me. That he could have chunked that water bottle down the street, across the street. He could have slammed it in the trash can. He could have just dropped it on the ground. But in that moment, he had more respect for those areas of the street than he had for me in that moment. And that's how I began to look at things. It took that situation. I do remember being in a family relationship where I'm not going to name the person, but I just realized in my relationship with that person that they had more respect for the trash on the ground or the trash underneath their shoe than the person that they were having a conversation with at that moment. And when you begin to realize that when a man is cheating and leaving and exiting, the relationship, that they actually have more respect for that affair partner, that mistress, that side chick than you, then that should tell you right there it's time to leave. I understand if it's hard to leave, because once you get into these relationships, you get so entangled. But if you look at it on that level, that they actually have more respect for that person over you, that should tell you something. I remember another situation, and I might have talked about it in a previous audio, where the guy that I was seeing or not seeing, I can't tell, he would want to see me, but then he would, call girls in front of me. And so I would have a problem with it, and I would tell him about it, and he would still do it. So I was always the one riding in the front seat. I was the one riding in the front seat of his car. But one day he picked up he picked up somebody, or we went to his church first, and he was going to take a family home that he knew, and it was the girl that he was calling was the family member, the person who was, part of a family, her brother, herself, right? And so she knew I was in town. She knew I was there, so it made sense that she would sit at the back. No, she gets up, she leaves the church, she sits in the front seat, and he doesn't say a word. And here it is, I'm sitting at the back seat, and I didn't realize that I had changed positions. Not at that moment when she sat in the first in the passenger seat, and she was calling shotgun. Not at that moment. I had actually changed positions, or he changed my position when he was calling girls in front of me. And I might even say that I changed positions, or he changed my position way before we got into a relationship with each other, that he knew that he was going to treat me as a certain type of person, like a rebound, that the person that he was going to be with was just not coming around. And so therefore it was much easier to take out his frustrations on me, and I'm talking about another guy, take out his frustrations out on me and use me as an emotional punching bag by acting out, calling the girl in front of me, putting another girl in the front seat. So he had issues. I didn't understand at the time what really was going on. I had to look back on that past experience, and now I basically understand what it is. It has a lot to do with respect. That when a man hits a woman, or a woman hits a man, that they have more respect for the wall than they do for the person, because they can easily take their hand and punch it into the wall or punch something. But they would, in that moment, rather respect the wall and anything else that they could use as a punching bag than to use your face. So here are some toxic male types. Jealous competitor, a man who uses jealousy to show intense love and for competition, suggesting that his jealousy will help you to become a better you. An arrogant, self-righteous know-it-all. This type of person attracts women by suggesting that he is an information source, a bridge to the right people. He offers advice. Seductive, manipulative, cheating liar. This type of male type ensnares through much communication and seduction. He gives sexually and with gifts. He is extravagant. Now, my ex was the type of ex. He wasn't going to give you anything. Now, he was a good lover, but that's because he loved sex. And so when we would break up, he would send me these long, drawn-out emails. He would send me these long, drawn-out texts. And he would just sort of pull at me emotionally. And what I realized he was doing, he was trying to wear me down. Again, I didn't get that until I basically, started writing the books, writing other types of, content, and you just go through a reflection period. But I still have all of those emails. I printed them out one time before, and it was sort of like to help me to write the book. I didn't use the language, but just to get an understanding of what was going on. And those emails went on for pages, for like 3, 4, 5, an email. And just the emails alone for pages. And then the text would be just really long text. And when you're trying to love someone and you're putting up with their bull, you give in to that much communication. And it is part of the seduction trap. Then you give in, then you end up having sex, then he gets up from that bed and he still goes back and cheats. It's like a hamster on the hamster wheel. He's not going to change. So a lot of times when they're saying, baby, please, baby, please, right? It's like they're singing some sort of R&B song. All they're basically trying to do is wear you thin, wear you out, wear you down. Because if they were truly going to change, they wouldn't have to continually use the same language to pull at you. So that seductive, manipulative, cheating liar uses a lot of communication. You will also see an abuser come back with gifts. He was never extravagant. He was never going to give me a lot of gifts. He didn't find me worthy for something like that, even though I found him worthy. But he would go to town on some communication. So I ended up having to block him in email. Later, after I broke things off for good, I blocked him in email. I changed my phone number. I went completely no contact, and I did that for a long time. Angry, bullying, control freak. So this person lures through a take charge approach. He is your rescue for everything, but the goal is to make you dependent upon him financially. So that doesn't really work with a person, with the woman who is independent. So they usually get some type of woman who has a need at that time, and she kind of trades her sex for a relationship, or trades her sex for security. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about a prostitute situation. If you remember, say, Love and Hip Hop, I don't know if it was the early seasons or the middle seasons, but Stevie J and Jocelyn, they got together. And they were going behind Mimi's back, right? And the way that Stevie J met Jocelyn was at the strip club. And Stevie J was is a well-known producer. So it's not hard to realize or to think to yourself, I might be able to use him to help me to get wherever I'm trying to get to. But she also used him financially. There comes a time when you want to come off a pole, metaphorically. And then in Jocelyn's case, and many other women's case, they want to come off that pole literally. But you don't always know how to go about it. Right? You don't know exactly what direction to take. The obvious direction to take is always education. Enroll in a junior college, take some classes, maybe get the 2-year degree, go on and get the university degree, and then you get a job. That's really the obvious. But people don't like sort of like the time it takes to do something like that 2 to 4 years. They want to be able to get whatever they want to get now. So Jocelyn used Stevie J to get her somewhere, financially, and Stevie J used Jocelyn for sexual variety, and I believe to almost make stick it to Mimi in some kind of way, because he never married Mimi. If you look at those episodes with Stevie J and Jocelyn, he's always reminding her of what he has done for her, and also reminding her that he should have left her at the strip club, and she can always go back to the strip club, all that kind of stuff. And there is an episode where she's crying and saying, I'm never going back there. I'm never going back there, or whatever. And you keep throwing that up in my face. And I'm basically paraphrasing. But she was, so broken up over that she said, I'm never doing it. I'm never going back, right? And that's that angry, bullying, control freak that he stepped outside of his relationship with Mimi to get with Jocelyn. And but you can tell he really did not want the relationship with Jocelyn, because if they have to control and manipulate and bully and tell them, tell that person that you are dependent upon me, that lets you know that the person really does not want the other person. And you see that now. Stevie J really did not marry Jocelyn. He did not honor her. I know there were, rumors of them marrying or whatever, but Jocelyn really was the rebound in the situation. It's the strangest thing, because once Stevie J broke up with Mimi, that situation, she found out that he was cheating and everything. Jocelyn actually became the rebound, because look who he ended up marrying, right? He is married to Faith, so he thought enough to honor her. Now, Faith got some money too now, so and she has some clout. However, he still honored her to marry her, and he's not going to pull that sort of angry, bullying, control freak issues, because he wants that relationship with Faith to work. And you see that in your ex. Your ex will, try to bully you, control you, manipulate you, seduce you, abandon you, leave you, all that kind of stuff. They will, dishonor and disrespect you, but they will show much honor, much respect to someone else later and marry that person. So also that self-destructive gloom and doom victim, this person ensnares you by making you feel sorry for him. These men wait until you jump in to bail them out. He considers you a savior. So that lets you know that person is somewhere stuck in their childhood or something like that, because you shouldn't have to look outside of yourself for someone to save you. You are the only one outside of Jesus Christ now. You are the only one who can save you. That if you are missing something, if there is something that you need to do, you need to get more skills, you need to get better education or something like that, that's for you to do. It's not for someone else to jump in and bail you out. And you have a lot of these types of people, not only men, who put on a face, a mask of gloom and doom victimhood, and they come around you, they bring all of that type of energy around you, and they have no true intention of changing their situation, changing how they view the world. They just want you to come in and save them in that moment of gloom and doom, because you don't see them when they are doing well. Once they have money, once they have some kind of, status, once they got a car, once they got everything that they want, you don't see them. So you know that it has to be a mask. There's the selfish, me, myself, and I narcissist. So this person lures with the idea that there is no one better than him, concerned with your looks because you are an appendage of him. So you will see this oftentimes in those types of high status relationships where the man is high status and the woman is just expected to be high status. So if he is a celebrity or if he's a wealthy, type person, whether he's private or public, you can't come at that man in private or in public looking like a certain thing, looking like average, because he considers himself above average, more than even above average. And so you have to look the part. It's all ceremony. Anyway, you leave your house, it's all ceremony. You have to be a responsible adult and not fight somebody and cuss people out and all that kind of stuff, right? You have to conduct yourself in public like you got some sense. Okay, but this takes it to a whole different level. That's why you will see many trophy wives, many older men date a younger woman, right? They don't want to date a older woman or a woman their age, because by a certain time in our lives as women, we tend to look like a mother. And I kind of understand why a man might not want to date a woman who doesn't keep herself up. Every woman should keep themselves up. I'm not going to dress like a 20-year-old. I can't keep that up for long. I know who I am as a person. I'm 44. And so I don't need to dress like a 20-year-old. I don't need to dress like a 30-year-old. I need to dress like a professional because that's who I am. Right? So a rich man probably would not be interested in me. I don't dress like I'm a mother, or I don't dress like I'm old or anything like that. And I'm not calling a mother old. I'm calling sometimes the look. I mean, how many times have you ever seen like a man real built, tall, athletic, and then there's a wife who you can tell hasn't been to the gym in years? And I hate to say it like that, I really do, because I don't like these vain I don't like this vain talk, but it is true. And she hasn't been to the gym, and she has let herself go so much to the point that she looks like almost his sister or his mother. And so with the selfish me, myself, and I narcissist, it takes it to a 100% level that you have to be on point all day, every day, even in the house. When I'm in the house, I like to put on my college t-shirt, and I like to be comfortable. But when you are with this type of person, you always have to be on. You can never get fat. I said this in the previous audio. You can never get fat. You can never have problems. The narcissist believes that if he doesn't have problems, you shouldn't have problems either. You can never really express yourself. You can never, be yourself in that type of context or relationship. You got to give off the appearance that you guys are high status, high class, elite type people. And then the psychopath, this person attracts by doing and saying anything he wants you to hear. If he knows you like a certain food or jewelry, he will make sure you get it. He will discover your vulnerable emotional spots and play to them. He will make you feel as though he is the only one who really understands you, which makes you stay connected to them. So in my previous relationships, friendship as well, those people did not think enough to do something like what I just read. Maybe I wasn't, high status enough for them to consider to use me in those types of ways. But I don't remember a person being so turned around by me that they had to go and buy jewelry and food and play up to my vulnerable emotional spots. you know, not in that way in terms of, trying to buy my love or manipulate me in that type of way. However, in my previous relationship, I realized that he might have been using sex to silence me in that moment. I had a problem with him cheating. He was calling his ex was calling him. I addressed the situation or whatever. We get mad, then we come back together and have sex, and he thinks that the sex is enough in that moment to help me in my frustrations, but then he turns around and does it again, like a cycle. And I think to myself, was it that he was really struggling to let go of the ex, or was he just playing a game? And he was just playing a game. He was just essentially playing a game. Like, you'll hear men and women play this game. Girl, I know how to put it on them. Girl, man, I put it on her. I put her to sleep, right? All that does is just silences you in that moment, but the real issues are still there. Toxic women bring pain into a man's or partner's life. Men have been pushed to suicide over the wrong woman. The roots of childhood play a significant part in shaping a toxic woman. Verbal, physical, sexual abuse might contribute to how she navigates romantic relationships as an adult. They also may play a role in her aggression. And I said in a previous audio that aggression is like it starts in childhood, but it's also sort of like a learned trait as well when you are up under an abusive, tired, struggling parent, especially if it is a single mother, and all you learn is how she responds to problems. She's a single mother. There's an absent father. That single mother may have 2 kids or 3 or 4 kids and having to take care of them, work, leave them at the house or with someone if they're younger. And then if she's interested in a relationship, she would get more aggressive, not to, disrespect the man, but it's almost like trying to pull at the relationship to close the deal. And so you might see aggression in that way. Then you just might see aggression in a woman who just wants to fight. Some folks, just want to fight. They just want to, fight and argue and yell and put their hands on their hips and shake their heads and, roll their heads. And some people just want to be able to do stuff like that. The part about the suicide a lot of times could be connected to a man deciding to leave his wife for another woman or another partner, and coming to find out that the woman was actually just using him, and she takes him for everything he got. And so it's just too depressing and embarrassing of a situation to stay. And then also you might see a suicide situation where the woman maybe introduces him to drugs, introduces him to, different vices that take him down, and that might contribute to him actually committing suicide. Then you might see the man who commits suicide as a result of finding out that a child that he thought was his was not actually his. So there are a number of reasons why a man might commit a suicide over the woman, but it's usually because she really tricked him. She really played him. She really conned him. So here are some toxic women, female types. She could be violent, social justice warrior, mentally ill. She likes to belittle, little people. It's the Mean Girls film that you see. It's the popular crowd led by this one girl, right? Um, she disrespects you in public, which is really hard, which is really bad, because you never want to disrespect anybody in public, let alone your own man. She's cheating on her boyfriend with you. She's obsessed with money or status. She's arrogant. She can't accept being treated well. She doesn't take responsibility. Those last two on the second column, I think, are very interesting. If you've always been in a type of relationship, or you come from some sort of childhood background where you were not respected, where you were not necessarily respected, but accepted, where you were treated like the black sheep, the problem, then it's hard for you to accept that in a true and genuine person, a person who just really wants to be your friend. Sometimes they might have that issues. Sometimes you might get upset with each other. But if you don't know how to receive love, you will think that even the good person is out to get you. And then also, she doesn't take responsibility. That's a very hard pill to swallow, because I've always had to take responsibility. I started working in high school, right? I only had a sort of 5 to 7 year gap where I had to go and live with a couple of family members. I had to live in, shelters, things like that, because I didn't have work, and it was during the recession, 07, 08 till about 2013. So I was, freelancing, but I've always been the kind of person who took responsibility. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that I understood what taking responsibility means. Some people have jobs and have places to live because they cannot live off anybody else. If you say that you want to be rich, like you are a type of person who wants to be rich, you're not really a worker. I understand that you've been on your job for 10, 15 years, but that is simply because you can't go and live with somebody else, and you realize that, so therefore you have to keep a job. But anybody who wants to be rich is essentially saying they don't really want to take responsibility in terms of everyday life. They want those fleeting pleasures that money can give them, going on trips, not being on a job for many years, not actually pursuing a dream or anything like that. They want the freedom. Now, money does buy freedom, but it is important to know what your gifts and talents are, what your purpose is on this earth. And not knowing that is your way of not taking responsibility. And that's why it's so easy for toxic women to move in with men, stay at their sisters' houses, still be living with their parents, anything like that to absolve them of responsibility, or choose a rich man, choose a good man, instead of learning how to work on your own, go to school, keep a place as an adult woman. They won't take that kind of responsibility. Toxic women will give you sort of like a crazy stare, crazy eyes. They might wear too much makeup. They may give you a fake smile. They tend to be crass and manipulative. They give off a tough vibe. They can be condescending. They throw tantrums, placing hands on hips. They force themselves to talk like a man, and then they lack the modesty and give off arrogance. And we talked about that. One of the things I think about manipulative that I did not realize, and that all of us on some level have exercised some kind of manipulation in situations, right? But it isn't until this last relationship, and now me being 44 years old, that there were maybe, some relationships where I might have exercised some manipulation to try to get the person onto a road. I kept picking people who had no aim, who had no purpose, who only wanted to live for the day. I kept picking those people, and I wasn't that type of person. I was the responsible one. And so maybe I would say, have you thought about going to college? Have you thought about this? Have you thought about choosing this type of job? And I will go get the information for them and everything. And that's a form of manipulation, even if you are well intentioned. Also, the woman who throws tantrums for respect is like that pouting child who falls out on the floor. And until you give that child his or her way, they're going to stay out on the floor just crying and everything. And I've never believed in giving in to a pouting child, especially when it's obvious. But if you stay in a relationship with a cheating man or a cheating woman in this regard, you are basically you're giving in to a pouting child. The cheating is a form of acting out. So if you don't give me my way, I'm going to pout. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to pursue emotional infidelity. I'm going to put my hands on my hips and you're going to give me my way. If not, then there are going to be consequences. As soon as someone pursues that particular option, you have already lost all of their respect. Not because you did something wrong, but because they just don't respect people in general. And so it might take another type of person who sits them down and puts them in their place, for them to act right. Because not all pouting children can pull the same type of game with everybody. There is someone that pouting and tantrum won't work with. So if it is working with you, you have already lost, that relationship. It's time for you to think about an exit. One key factor in the literature and in comments from men is the perspective towards aggression. Aggression is developed in childhood. There are 2 types and 3 forms. So there is proactive aggression. Children act to fulfill a need or desire, obtain an object, privilege, space, attack a person unemotionally to achieve their goal. Reactive aggression. This is an angry, defensive response to provocation or a blocked goal. So you may, if the goal for, say, a toxic woman is to get out of her current financial, situation, which she doesn't have a job, her own place to live, or anything like that, then you become that object that she's going to obtain. And it's more women doing that than men, because if it's a high status man, he doesn't look at a high status woman and says, I need to obtain her. For him, it is up to her to come to him and obtain him, right? So if the desire is to move out of one economic station into another, and instead of moving out using a job and education, you decide that you want to pursue a wealthy man, a rich man, then that becomes your objective. That becomes almost like your dream. And then you will use any of your own personal sexual gifts and talents to secure that relationship. That is proactive aggression, right? Reactive aggression, this is an angry, defensive response to provocation or a blocked blocked goals. So then you are in the relationship and you want the person to buy you everything you want, right? And even with a wealthy man, a high status man, he still has limits. He still, sets boundaries. Even if a wealthy man will have like a whole car collection, that's an investment. He sees that as an investment, right? But you won't see him just spending money without purpose. So then here you come along, you got the objective, you have achieved the objective to have him, right? Then he follows it up by marrying you, and then you want to do more things like a child, right? Because you're still in your child type of mentality, and then he gets angry and defensive, right? You are kind of provoking him. Why can't I have this? I should be able to have this. He's blocking the goal that you have to have everything you want through him. And so you are essentially provoking him, right? And by default, you think he is provoking you because he won't give you everything you want. So that's reactive aggression. Both proactive aggression and reactive aggression are expressed in these three forms. So physical, verbal, and relational. So physical, where you harm to others through physical injury, including pushing, hitting, kicking, punching others. Verbal, harm to others through threats of physical aggression, name calling, hostile, teasing. And then relational, that's the damage to peer relationships via social exclusion, gossip, and manipulation. So how many times do we see this now? We see in adulthood our childhood representations of activities that we did when we were children and adolescents, that we are still children on the playground, and that if we don't get our way in a situation, we're going to hit and kick and punch. If you see a man continually hitting a woman, there is something in that man that is still childlike, that makes him think that he still has to pursue that course of action in order to accomplish his goals. If you see a woman verbally name calling, hostile, teasing, being condescending, there is still something in her from childhood that makes her feel like she has to pursue that course of action. Have you ever watched that show, 600-pound person or whatever? When that person is, trying to lose weight and get better, and they are 600 pounds and they're going down to about 400, and everyone has to kind of come together and carry that person and help that person and things like that. And I venture to say that coming around and helping that person in that way really began much earlier than before that person got to 600 pounds. They were just the type of person that you had to sort of stop everything you were doing in order to see if they were okay. Well, I was watching an episode a couple of days ago, and the lady is married, and the man helps her. He's not 600 pounds. She is. And I don't know what was going on in the relationship, but he had just helped her through the room. He had done so much, to get her into the hotel, because they were going to go to Houston to see Dr. Now. And he had done so much in that moment, changed the rooms, right? They were in one room and the bed wasn't big enough, and then they changed the rooms, and then he had to help her all over again, and she was like 800 pounds. And I heard her call him asshole. Now, I don't know what he did or said because the cameras, didn't catch that part. I don't know. But the fact that that person just helped you in that kind of way and has been with you all these years as a husband or as a wife, and you can just call that person an asshole, that is telling to me. That is so horrible. And what that basically tells me is that she's been using those types of name calling and hostile teasing to keep him on the hook. Because she can't really give him sex. She's too big to kind of give him sex. So she got to keep him on the hook some kind of way. And so she's using verbal aggression to accomplish her goal. And then relational aggression, that damage to peer relationships via social exclusion, gossip, and manipulation. I never did well in groups, in peer groups. I did have friends in, K through 12, but I never did well in friend groups because somehow they could perceive that in some ways I was the weaker link, but they could also perceive that I was the person that they couldn't, fully manipulate, that I could take you or leave you too in that situation. But I never did well in groups, simply because of relational aggression. Although physical aggression and verbal aggression are obvious, it is relational aggression that is more subtle. It is best expressed in statements children make to their peers. Do what I say or I won't be your friend. This statement in childhood best epitomizes adult manipulation in relationships today. It is the best representation of an ultimatum women give. Well, you can say the same also about men. Women use this type of, ultimatum. I mean, if you don't buy me this thing, then I'm leaving. Or if you don't want to do this, that's fine. I can get my daddy to do it. That type of manipulation. But you can say the same in a man, cheating outside of the relationship. Do what I say. Do what I believe. Accept what I believe. I think cheating is necessary. Right? So accept what I believe. And if you don't, I won't come back and have sex with you. I won't come back and, be your friend in that kind of way. I won't come back and go to the movies with you. In other words, I won't come back and be in relationship with you. And if you've ever sort of struggled in, something like that, where you have been abandoned in your lifespan, it's really hard to give up that type of person. Not because you don't always love yourself, but because, you haven't addressed those types of abandonment issues. It reflects negative impulsivity and issues with social skills. When one makes that statement, the person bypasses social development and moves into antisocial activity. So according to these authors here, children who are emotionally negative, impulsive, and disobedient are prone to early high rates of physical or relational aggression, or both, that often persist, placing them at risk for internalizing and externalizing difficulties, social skills deficits, and antisocial activity in middle childhood and adolescence. This creates a distorted view. So if you have to be negative and controlling, impulsive, disobedient, exercising physical, verbal, and relational aggression, you truly do have a distorted view, not only of relationships in adulthood, you have a distorted view of the world. That you will see the person carry out these types of activities in business, in other types of relationships, because they believe that the only way to have you is to control you. The only way to navigate life is to, disobey, not adhere, not respect. The only way to get you to do whatever it is they want you to do is to hit you, is to name call you, is to socially isolate. And you see people often do this in adulthood. So that means it's so much that is not resolved from childhood. This distorted view has its roots in the family dynamic, which serves as a training ground for how we relate to other people. If a home is conflict ridden at childhood and adolescence, and the individual does not reflect and move to heal wounds, then it is arguable that an individual will attempt to replicate conflict in marriage and in friendships. Parents try to be forceful in their relationships with their children, punishing bad behavior, but they also threaten and give in. There is no stability. I think that, second bullet point is probably the most important. If a home is conflict ridden at childhood and adolescence, and the individual does not reflect and move to heal wounds, then it is arguable that an individual will attempt to replicate conflict in marriage and in friendships. There are some people, they just cannot live outside of conflict. They just refuse. Now, it could be in part because of their childhood, that the only way that the parent was able to get anything done or get the children to do anything was to create sort of like a chaotic, conflict-ridden, I'm going to beat you if you don't do it, I'm going to whoop you, right? Or to create a situation where the children are, sort of pitted against each other, right? You have those types of homes where the father will pit child against child, the mother will pit child against child, right? Then people will often replicate that type of conflict in their marriage and in friendships. You'll see if they come from a home where the parents pit the children against each other, or the parents pit the children against another parent, you'll see that woman or that man leave that childhood family dynamic and move those types of strategies into her relationships, into her marriage. And the funny thing is, she don't understand why her mate, her partner, doesn't just comply. He doesn't want to comply to that kind of manipulation, or she doesn't want to comply to that kind of manipulation. It worked in her family dynamic. Otherwise, she would not be, bringing it into her marriage and friendships. But she can't understand why, when she tries to do it with friends and marriage, her partner, that it doesn't work with those types of people, right? That they leave her, and she can't understand it, or he can't understand it. Because like I said in the previous slides, that there are some people that pouting and tantrums will not work with, and replicating conflict is really no different than pouting, falling out on the floor, and giving a tantrum. This lack of stability in perception of relationships is spread to peer relationships. Lack of stability affects the capacity for emotional self-regulation and guilt after committing a transgression. When there is destructive sibling conflict, this too contributes to poor self-control and antisocial behavior. This results in the rejection of highly aggressive children by a peer. So, just like I said, even people on the playground, there were some people that a bully could not bully. And you see that now in adulthood, that there are some people that an adult bully cannot bully, that they're just not going to take it. They don't even have to fight with you. They know how to walk away. They know how to not deal with you. If you have to give somebody an ultimatum, and we talked about that for, if I can remember, part 1, under this reason number 6, that some ultimatums do not work with people who are not the marrying kind. And then even if they are the marrying kind, I would just add that some ultimatums do not work with those people. They don't want to be controlled. That it's like you having the use of an ultimatum is like you having your foot on their neck, and they don't want to live and reside and house under your neck. Under your foot. Treatment for aggression at the child and adolescent levels is available, but it must begin early. At the adult level, without therapy and or personal reflection, it is difficult to change. Interventions that focus on resolving distorted views and modifying aggression is effective for developing conflict resolution skills. So I think oftentimes where there is conflict is when we don't always consider the perspective of others, or consider the idea that people have perspective, that they have a viewpoint. When we already have our own viewpoint, we've already made up our minds, conflict ensues because the person wants to be able to voice their opinion, and you are trying to silence their voice by not taking into consideration their opinion. Conflict resolution also includes promoting empathy, sympathetic concern. Where we go wrong as adults is that we might have been in the same situation the person is going through now, but we feel like we have, gotten past that, and now instead of responding to someone who is struggling with the situation, we criticize them. And in a strange sense, we may be really criticizing ourselves for being in that situation in the past. But the person needs you now. And I'm not saying you need to give all of your empathy and all of your sympathy to every time a person comes along, because a lot of times those people could be victim, have a victimhood mentality as well. But that's where we kind of struggle. That's where conflict can come in, because you're not understanding the pain. The same pain that they are going through is the same pain you just got out of. And then learn to cope with stressors. So you might hear people who struggle with drugs or, any type of abusive situation, psychological abusive situation, to know your triggers, right? That a certain type of person, for me now, that I realize after writing the books and developing this lecture series, that a person who doesn't want anything, has no aim, just wants to use me, is a trigger. They just want sex, right? They are hunting for sex, but not hunting for commitment, and that they will abandon me at the right turn when the right person comes along, right? That's a stressor. That's a trigger for me. So now I have to know not to give in to those types of people, because that same type of person I have been dealing with from the time I was young all the way to adulthood, and I didn't know it. And I had been sleepwalking the whole time. So you have to know what your stressors are. I cannot have a roommate situation anymore. I have done a roommate situation before, and I can't control the situation. I can't control the house. I don't like people in the house. I don't know who you are. And so when you have a roommate situation, you have to take into consideration their likes and dislikes, and you have to be polite. And at 44 years old, I don't want to be polite. When I come into the house, I want to come into the house. I want to chunk my clothes, put on some food to cook, watch some TV, work on some more chapters of my book or something like that. And I don't want to have to be polite. That's why I don't necessarily entertain. And so sometimes you will have a roommate situation where they love people at the house. They just love, like they have to have a whole crowd of people. I'm not one of those types of people. And then receive counseling where necessary. So some people just don't value the importance of counseling, right? Now the counselor can't save you, but they can give you some tools and tips, right, to navigate your life and reflect and assess on those areas that have sort of brought you stress. Any female who derives from a conflict-ridden family dynamic where the mother was more aggressive than the father in a two-parent home, and where the mother was more aggressive as a result of taking on a male role and being the primary breadwinner as a single parent, then this thinking will be reflected in how the woman deals with the man in romantic relationships. So we've kind of talked about that. Although boys more than girls tend to receive harsher punishment because of their impulsivity and because they are harder to control, they display aggression more than girls. Girls, however, are more verbally and relationally in their aggression and therefore concentrate aggressive acts in relationships. And we sort of already talked about that. So, female aggression over male toxicity may be one of the reasons why they marry someone else. Now, I used female aggression over male aggression because male aggression, oftentimes females will still respond to, try to give him whatever he needs, and then he will sort of, calm down, right? Male aggression, a woman has already proven through record that she will put up with almost anything from a man, even if he's hitting her, even if he's cheating on her. There is a record of that in data and statistics, and I hate to say it that way, but men in some strange way have more respect for themselves than oftentimes women do. That female aggression for a man is a deal breaker, whereas male aggression for a woman may still be a deal breaker, but it'll take her a longer time to get out of that relationship for whatever reason. So that's why I say at the very end here, even though I talk about toxic men and toxic women, that for the man in particular, female aggression may be one of the reasons why they decided to marry someone else. All right, so hopefully you were able to gain insight from this video discussion. Please like, subscribe, and visit. So please like the video, hit the notification bell for more discussions. I am re-uploading all of my audios, so I needed to make some changes to them. You can visit my website for more content at reginayfavors.com. If you want to send me an email, you can send an email, reginayfavors@yahoo.com. Please also purchase the book. It's going to come out in spring 2021, so I had to make changes to my book to update it, and I also updated the title. So the original title was Bait, Hook, and Switch, Confessions of a Rebound Girl, and I have updated the title to Toxic Encounters, Why People Pursue Rebound Relationships. So right now I'm still basically editing it, and I want to make it available in spring 2021. So thank you very much for visiting my channel, and I am Regina Y. Favors. Have a great day.